Hello, everyone, and thank you guys so much for joining us here today. I am accompanied by our awesome Associate Attorney, Cynthia Milian, and today we're going to be discussing on how to get your immigration records from FOIA and FBI background checks. This might sound like, why does the FBI need my information for immigration? But we'll get to that in just a second. A little bit on our associate attorney. She is the associate attorney here at Powers Law Group. She focuses on family-based removal, defense, immigration, and she is the vice president of MABA. She's also a pro bono attorney for the Montgomery County Immigration Law Clinic, and of course is fluent in Spanish. Thank you for your community involvement, Attorney Milian. We truly appreciate you. And I'll let you go ahead.
Thanks for that introduction. So we're going to talk about how you can get your records for immigration purposes. Some of the learning objectives are: what is the FOIA? Why do you need it? What is an FBI background check? And why do you need that? We're going to go through the different agencies that you can go through to get these records. What are some exemptions, and how can you get your criminal records as well? So let's get it started. So what is FOIA and why do you need it? So since 1967, the Freedom of Information Act has provided the public the right to request and access to records of any federal agency. So it's often described as the law that keeps citizens in the know about what is happening with the government. And so what this means is that the federal agencies are required to disclose information that is requested when you submit the FOIA, unless it falls under one of the exemptions, which protects the interests of national security, law enforcement, or for your own personal privacy. So the first agency under which you can request a FOIA is USCIS, or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And with this agency, what you would do is you would request your entire A or alien file. If you ever have been assigned a 9-digit number, or some in the past an 8-digit number that starts with the letter A, this is where you would request that file. And so USCIS would have copies of any petitions filed, any paperwork that you may have filed through USCIS, it would be with USCIS. And also if there was any removals, detention, or any deportation records prior to the year 2000, you would also go through the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services FOIA request, as opposed to after. And so for you to get this request, right, you would need to have your name, the A number, the date of birth, a valid photo ID in order to make this request. If, for example, you had an asylum interview, or if you submitted an asylum application at some point, that this would also be under USCIS. The processing time for these are usually about 6 to 9 months, or it could be longer, but there are some ways in which you can get this faster. So for example, if you are currently in removal proceedings or before an immigration judge, and you need to get a FOIA to get the asylum officer's notes, then you can do something like a fast track type of request, where you can let USCIS know, I need this FOIA as soon as possible, because if not, there's going to be a due process violation, given that my hearing is coming up and I know what it is. I want to know what the asylum office wrote in their notes, or why it is that they referred my case to court. And so we've seen some quick turnaround there. But generally, if you want to get a FOIA for a past copy of a petition or an application for residency that was filed 10 years ago, then you would go this route. Now, after the year 2000, right, we were able to get documents for different agencies. And one of them is the Executive Office of Immigration Review, which is under the Department of Justice. So with this FOIA, you would get copies of any court orders, if you need a copy of your notice to appear, if a judge has made a decision and you haven't got a copy of it, right, an asylum approval notice, and you would go through this FOIA, where you would need the name, your date of birth, the location in which your removal proceedings took place, right? The more information you can provide, the better, so that they can give you that information as soon as possible. So if you had your hearing in New Mexico, then you're going to disclose that in the request that you're making. Now, if you've ever had any issues, apprehensions, or encounters with Customs and Border Patrol, then you can do a CBP FOIA. These are typically done online. That's how we do them here in the office. And a CBP FOIA is typically if you've had any apprehensions at the border, or any sort of interaction with Customs and Border Patrol, if you've had voluntary returns or expedited removals, or if you've been able to get an advanced parole entry at the border, then this is the agency that would have these records. And this is very important. If, for example, you're considering doing a provisional waiver and you may have had some sort of interaction in the past with Customs and Border Patrol, then you want to make sure that you get this FOIA, because you don't want to find out that you have an expedited removal order when you're out of the country in your consular process interview, or towards the end of a process that has already taken about 3 years. So it's very important that you know the difference between each agency, and that you make that request with the appropriate agency, because a CBP FOIA is not going to give you probably what a FOIA for court will give you, and vice versa. So just because there's not an entry or an encounter within a USCIS FOIA doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist. And this kind of just highlights that importance of why you need to do an appropriate FOIA request. Now, there's also the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which is ICE. You can do a FOIA with them if you want to get a copy of any interactions you've had with them, if you've been detained at some point in a detention center. If you want to get maybe medical records, arrest records from while you were there, then you would file this ICE FOIA request, and this would take about 10 to 15 weeks or more. Another tool that we use, you can also do an OBIM request, right? Sometimes you may have had an interaction, but Customs and Border Patrol doesn't have record of it, but there is the Office of Biometrics Identity Management. Maybe they did take your fingerprint and did take a photo. And so you can go through that route if you're 100% certain that you had an interaction and maybe it can't be shown anywhere else. And this is a good alternative for you to get those records as well. The Department of State, so this is the agency that essentially handles all consular process. So anything that is done abroad at a consular post or an embassy abroad, then the Department of State would have these records. So if you have a past visa application, immigrant or non-immigrant, a passport application, or anything that you may have gone through the Department of State to get those records through, then you would file this request. Of course, you need the name, the alien registration number, the date of birth, and the place of the date of the requested information. So for example, if you had an immigrant interview for a immigrant visa in December of the year 2000 in Guatemala, so then you would disclose all of that so that you can get a copy of what was submitted at that point with the DOS. And so what are FOIA exemptions? So from the very beginning, we talked about how this is a law that was created since the 1960s that gave you an opportunity to be in the know of the government, right? But there were some exemptions that we talked about. And, we see this time and time again that we'll make a request for a FOIA and then we get it back. There's like 300 pages. And out of those 300 pages, maybe there's about 150 with exemptions on it or codes. So some of these codes can be, for example, if there's classified information that protects the national security, or if there's information that's related solely to the internal personnel rules and practices of that agency, or if it's privileged communication within or between agencies. So just keep in mind that although we may get these FOIA documents, sometimes they may not be too conclusive because of these exemptions, and there really is no way around them at some time. So that's why it's good to get a few of the FOIA requests to see if maybe information that isn't disclosed in one can potentially be disclosed in another. An FBI background check, right? Why would you want to get this, right? So this is when you may have been a part of a crime, right? And you're not sure of when or where it happened, or if you may have had a crime dismissed or expunged from your record, then you want to get this, because when you file an application, it doesn't matter where you file it or at what point, if it's a permanent residency application or application for citizenship, at every point you're going to have to disclose if you were ever arrested, convicted, charged with anything. And if at some point you were and you don't recall, then this is a good way for you to start. And you want to start with this and not file and then wait for them to issue a request for evidence, because usually you can be limited in the amount of time you have to respond. And if, for example, you have 30 days to respond to a request for evidence for a arrest in the 1970s, and you're unsure of where to start, then you can lose that application, lose that filing fee, and then start from scratch. So if you're ever in a position where you think, you know what, I may have been arrested at some point, but I don't remember where or when, then you start with the FBI background check to get that information to kind of narrow in where it might have took place. And just remember that, you do have to get biometrics done for any form of relief or applications that you file. So this is how they're able to retrieve that information that there may have been arrest or some interaction with the law. And criminal records, right? So there's state and federal. You want to be careful, and you always want to know kind of where to start, right? If you were arrested in Harris County, what county was it in? An arrest record may not be enough, right? If there was an actual judicial proceeding that took place, you may need the indictment, the outcome. If there was a plea agreement, you're going to need to disclose all of that, right? That will probably absolve you from anything, and that'll make you establish your eligibility for a form of relief, or just to have an attorney make an analysis and an argument for why you are eligible for a form of relief. So it's very important that you have all of these records and that they are certified whenever you apply for anything, especially for residency and naturalization here in the US. We don't, maybe a judge's order, you think it's sufficient, but it's not enough. They want more. They probably want the arrest report. They want, if you went into deferred adjudication, did you plea for you to get that? Did you make did you have to declare that you were, innocent or guilty in order to go into that? Or if you did a pretrial diversion program, they want to know what it took for you to get there. And this is also needed all the times if you're in court as well, right? If you're requesting bond, or if you're requesting a form of relief like cancellation of removal, the judge is going to want to see all of this. So if you have them, keep them and hold them because they will be applicable anytime you file for a form of relief for immigration. And if not, then, consider getting these copies and having them. So my concluding thoughts are, request those before you need them. Every FOIA, FBI background check, criminal records, request them before you need them, because when you may need them, you may be in a time crunch and not have enough time to get them, and it could be too late. And like I said earlier, keep copies of those records. And, when you are making these requests or considering them, make sure you talk to an attorney that's experienced in doing these, right? Because you want to make sure that you've exhausted all resources and opportunities before you go forward with a form of relief, like a provisional waiver, making sure that you've thoroughly checked that there are no outstanding orders of removal or voluntary removals or anything like that can make you ineligible for something and make you be stuck outside of the country for a few years. So make sure you talk to experienced counsel and do these, before you may need them. This was a lot of information, but, we talked about FOIAs, we talked about them in the past, and this is something that we always like to start off with. We have cases where clients may not be 100% sure of what has happened in their past. So it would benefit you if you speak to an attorney if you have any questions on this, and I'll let Dana give you more information on how you can reach us.
Thank you so much, Attorney Milian. But yeah, again, if you all have any questions pertaining your case, or you don't know if maybe you need to do a FOIA for your case, give us a call at 713-589-2085, and you guys can also shoot us an email at contact@ReviewPowersLaw. And we do these videos on different immigration topics every week, actually. And our next video is going to be on becoming a U.S. citizen through naturalization. So tune in for that, guy. If you missed any of them, you can find them on our YouTube and on our Facebook. I'd also suggest tuning into our social media. We post regularly on immigration updates and upcoming webinars. But that'll be it for today. Thank you all again for joining us, and we hope to see you all on the next one. Bye.
Bye.